So theoretically, you could build a series of agents in a container that had access to GitHub, it had access to AWS or Azure, had access to maybe some
Apple's, yeah.
testing tools or whatever, and you could theoretically have a super agent that would orchestrate all that and do it. But something tells me that at least in the near term, that would be a recipe in disaster or failure. And welcome to Practical AI, everybody. My name is Jeff. I'm here with Peter Lynn. Practical AI is brought to you by Pocket AI. Pocket AI is a tool you can use to edit the weights of your model. With Pocket AI, you can prune over 60% of the weights in your model without loss, without decreasing accuracy. Peter, this is season 3, episode 1. And we wanted to kick off this season with a little bit of chatter around software development and software in general.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about what's happening in software, and ultimately the question is AI helping the landscape of software development?
It's helping in some ways, but it's making things worse in some ways. So the kind of the from the vibe community right now, right? The vibe coding, which is coding with an AI assistant, is that yes, it's quick, it helps you speed things up, but what people are finding is it generates a lot of garbage code. So a lot of the code it generates is redundant or duplicate. It might have the same function in multiple places with different names. It might call it in one instance, but call the other one in another instance. But then it's like, why is it calling different ones? Why is there multiple? Why is it duplicates? So in general, the code quality is pretty poor.
And that's because the code that it's being trained on, these Copilot and others, they're being trained on poor code generally.
Yes, because if you use GitHub code, I, just from my own experience of my own code, most code is pretty ugly. It's written because you've got short deadlines, you've got requirements that are constantly changing, you've got like dozens of issues preventing you from writing great code. And so most code out there is really ugly and it's kind of not in great, it's not in the ideal design.
I've heard that Anthropic's code is top notch, although I'm not a coder, right? So I don't use it. I heard people talking about Copilot all the time, Microsoft. Have
Yeah.
you what have you dabbled with, and what have you liked
So
or disliked?
Copilot's code I find to be kind of lacking. Oftentimes it hallucinates solutions that don't exist. Like I'll ask it like, hey, this library in Python, I want to do this, and then it invents some function, and I'm like, that function does not exist in there. Why are you telling me to use this function? And they're like, oh, sorry, yeah, no, it should be this function. I'm like, no, you just said the same one again. like, no, that function does not exist. right. Whereas Claude, I find is better, but it also generates garbage code.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, the what we're dealing with, like most of my clients are convinced that this is going to change. They're not going to need programmers to the degree that they need them right now. And so, on the one hand, we've got the sort of the reality. You're kind of representing reality, like the
Yeah.
code isn't that good and whatever. But on the other side, you've got this idea, this movement that no, this is going to happen, and I'm going to make sure it happens. A CEO is going to make sure that they can eliminate their programmers or reduce them significantly. So something's got to give. What do you think is realistic from a positive perspective in this space? What could happen?
The positive thing is people that don't program today can learn programming faster, right? Because you can use English, it'll generate the code for you in that particular language, and you may not fully understand why that piece of code is written the way it's written. There's reasons why. So it'll take less time to learn how to write code, but that doesn't mean you understand the fundamental principles of computer science. That takes time, right? Like most college graduates from a computer science program learn how to write a compiler. And many people with CS degrees think, oh, well, I wrote a compiler class, so I know everything there is about compilers. Well, that ain't true. Like it takes 5 to 6 years of writing compilers day in, day out to get really good and understand why compilers work the way they work. So one class doesn't make you a compiler expert. It takes 5 to 10 years. So can LLMs and ChatGPTs and Gemini and Claude accelerate that learning? No. But it'll help the beginner that doesn't know any code be able to write code. Now they're still going to have to understand why compilers are structured the way it's structured and why languages are structured the way it is. They'll understand why sometimes the software doesn't match with the hardware and then things run slow.
So so we'll be able to get people into coding, or they'll be able to code something faster.
Yeah.
Um, will they be able to get like MVPs built out? Will they be able to eliminate like big chunks of the software development lifecycle? Where's the gain?
The gain is really being able to just get something to show someone else. But like in the case of building a real application, right? The hard part is really the UX part, where a UX user experience designer creates some screen, shows it to users, they give their feedback, they then process all that feedback and realize, okay, I'm getting all these mixed messages, but the common theme is these ideas. That person will then go back to the audience and say, okay, I've read all your feedback, I've clicked on all the stuff, I've thought about it. Is the reason why I get these complaints because of these things, and so that experience is important, and that's what helps you derive what you actually need to build and how to build it, right? Like so, if you've taken a screen and you just plopped everything on it, people are like, oh, I can't figure out what I'm looking at. It's like, okay, so UX person be like, okay, all right, what's the best flow through this data because it's a huge amount of data. What's the natural entry point? Is it from like the user or from like let's say you're a hospital and you want to figure out like a person comes to you, oh I need to get my prescription. Well, what screen do you start with? Do you start with the customers or you start with the prescriptions? So the context is important, and knowing how to design the application is based on experience. And so that you can't get from GPT or Gemini, right? Like if someone were to fine tune those models specifically for UX and get thousands of UX designers to create a data set to then train it to know what to ask and know how to interpret, then a beginner could then use that model to then speed up the process of gathering requirements.
Okay, so essentially what I'm hearing is that you can learn how to code, or not learn how to code, but you could get something coded,
Yeah,
built. So that's essentially like a proof of concept.
yeah,
Um, but POCs are great to leverage back to the user and say, I built something, what do you think? And you're saying that even if you put that on hyperspeed and had with the ability to create tons and tons of POCs on top of each other, you still need the UX person
yeah.
to make the connection. You're not going to speed up the requirements process just by kicking out more POCs. You still need the UX thing.
Right.
At which point you said if you could build a model that was built off of sort of the emotional intelligence side, the UX side,
Yeah.
you could possibly do that, but that seems a little futile, uh, right? I mean,
Well, I
that's
mean, I think
we're
someone
getting
should
out of
do it.
math and we're getting into something that's not math, right?
Right. Yeah. So the thing is LLMs don't understand emotions, and we don't even know how to model emotions today in AI. So that's been a long-standing problem for 50, 60 years now. Of like we don't know how to model emotions in an AI system, right? But do you have to? Well, you probably don't have to. If you got enough UX designers to kind of feed it good data about how to go through this process, it could probably figure out the hidden patterns,
Yeah.
and then you could then train a beginner faster. So maybe instead of 5 years to get good at UX, maybe it's only 2 years, which would still be it'd be a nice speed up.
Well, even if it wasn't just replacing the UX people, even if you could get the requirements out of the users
Yeah,
through that, that would save a ton. And then you bring in your heavy hitters towards
yeah,
a later the tail end of the process. Okay, so
yeah,
let's keep moving down the sort of software development life cycle. Eventually, you got to deploy this thing somewhere, right? You have
yeah.
to like you have something. that functions. It now, because of some UX work, it meets the requirements of the user. But then you have to put it into production and just explain the series of steps just at a high level of what needs to get done and where AI is not currently playing.
So today AI just does the coding part. It doesn't do the UAT, doesn't do the DevOps, doesn't do the build, doesn't do the deploy, doesn't do uploading it to Apple's App Store. It doesn't do all the other stuff. So like Karpathy wrote an app in one afternoon, and then he spent a whole week to get up to the App Store.
And he would have spent a week getting up to the App Store regardless of if he
Yeah.
used AI to write the code, right? That's the long pole in the tent, right?
Right. So in his talk, he was saying, so people should write agents for this stuff because I don't want to have to sit there and manually click through all the screens to like create a key, download the key, do the authentication, download the key for that, and all these other steps that are today manual. So could you build agents for that? Yeah. I
So
mean,
theoretically, you could build a series of agents in a container that had access to GitHub, it had access to AWS or Azure, had access to maybe some
Apple's, yeah.
testing tools or whatever, and you could theoretically have a super agent that would orchestrate all that and do it. But something tells me that at least in the near term, that would be a recipe in disaster or failure, and that
Yeah, no,
even
you still
long
want a human. Yeah, you still want a human in the loop where you've got agents for generating the unit tests. Human needs to review that to make sure they all make sense. Because right now, most unit tests generated are just a happy path. There's no, failure path tests because it's not good at that. So a human has to write those other cases. Once you have that, you can then have it generate a DevOps pipeline to build and deploy and package stuff. But humans should review that because at some point you probably need to have either a certificate or some kind of key or some security related stuff. Like you have to sign the package. Like in the case of Apple, you have to actually sign it with a key. So that today is a manual process. Now, could you automate that? Yes, but should you in all cases? You may not, right? Like for the dev environment, it's probably okay, but for the production, you probably want that to be secure and only allow the admins to do it.
And then I'm just imagining a scenario where 100 years from now, people have been doing this for a long time, and no one actually knows how to code. No one knows how to deploy. No one
Yeah,
knows environments or config or all that stuff. It's just been done by agents
yep,
and trained on trained on agentic examples.
yep,
And it just seems to me that if the code is fat, if it's not tight,
yeah.
eventually your training data is going to get more and more weird. It's going to get skewed, and you're going to end
Yes.
up like where no one's going to know how to do anything because the agents don't even do it anymore.
Right. The downside is once it fails miserably and completely collapses, you're gonna need someone really expensive that knows the stuff. And so that person that's an expert, right? You're gonna be really, really desirable because when all this stuff breaks, they be like, hey, our AI pipeline for building and deploying our apps to the App Store is completely broken and no one in our company knows how to fix it. So now this guy that knows it can charge $500 an hour. It's like, I can fix it.
Yeah,
What's your fee? My fee is $500 an hour. It's like that's too expensive. It's like, well, okay, fine.
yeah,
Anybody
no.
you know how to do it? No. It's like, okay, well, $500 an hour. Take it or leave it.
So the long story short is use leverage AI where you can,
Yeah.
but know how stuff works.
No, you
Know
have to
the
know how stuff works because it's gonna break. The minute it breaks, you have to be able to fix it, right? Because if you don't know how to fix it, you gotta hire someone else, and that person is not gonna want to work for cheap.
it's been true in every industry and everything forever, right? The
Yep.
person that understands how something works, they might be passed over for a couple of things, but eventually someone needs that person.
Yeah. When you need that person, it's
Yep.
gonna be expensive. It's like Oracle. I remember when I first started, people would balk like the Oracle database consulting fee was like $400 or $500 an hour. Like, and the minimum buy-in for Oracle's. help was like 10K. We're like 10K for how many hours? Like for 20 hours. We're like, we need 20 hours. Like, that's the fee, man. Then after
Yeah.
that, we give you a discount. Like, it's like 10K to just get help for an expert DBA from Oracle. Then after that, then it's like you get a reduced rate. But to get that help initially, it's like you got to pay.
For sure. Well, and when I YouTube, doing a three-way switch in my house on the electrical and run a shock through my body because I can't get it to work, I'll pay whatever I can for the electrician that knows what he's doing to come over and fix my problem. So,
Yep.
all right, good stuff, Peter. Thanks for the deal. I think you're probably right, and we're going to have to keep an eye on software development. But in the meantime, our clients are just going to continue to demand that this goes away, but it's not.
Yeah.
Good. All right. Well, be sure to ask us questions, leave comments. We will try to address them. Also, you can follow us on Spotify. We upload there as well. Thank you for starting season 3 with us, and we will be back next time with another topic. Thanks, everybody.